Today is Girl Scout Day at the Newseum. Is this exciting?
Yes.
We're going to have a lot of fun. There's so much to see in this amazing museum. We're so excited that all of you are here for that. And we wanted to kick off by having a media panel. And I have with me 4 and soon to be 5. We have one more person coming, but she is currently on the air. So she has to get off the air to then come. So she will come a little bit later. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask each one of our amazing panelists to talk a little bit about their life and how they got started. And then we're going to do the most interesting part of the whole experience, which is where you get to ask any question that you have about their careers, about media, about journalism, about anything at all that you are thinking about as you're trying to plan what you want to do when you finish elementary school, middle school, or high school. How many middle schoolers do we have? 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Woohoo! And how many high schoolers do we have? Do we have anyone that is in elementary school? Yay! So are we going to have a lot of fun? So my name is Lidia Soto-Harmon, and I have the amazing job of being the CEO of the Girl Scout Council of the nation's capital. And Daryl Wolke invited me to come and moderate this panel this morning so that all of you could have this amazing experience. So with that, I am going to turn to our amazing panel. I'm going to start with Angie Goff. And Angie, hi Angie Goff. You're not here yet, so we will introduce you a little later. So Danielle Ivory. So Danielle Ivory is a reporter for Bloomberg News, and she has a degree from Princeton and University of Oxford, and she's done all sorts of amazing things, but I'm not going to go through the whole bio if that's okay. And we have the illustrious Debi Jarvis, who is the second time that she's come and done this panel. She was here last year as well. And Debi works for Pepco Holdings Incorporated, but before that she was a television journalist, and she had, and people are nodding, yes, we remember seeing Debi on the air. Yeah, so in 2004 she started this new career using all of her media background to bring it to a local company that does utilities. So we're so excited that you are here, Debi. And then next to her we have, and I want to say it correctly, Angela Greiling Keane. I mispronounced it. I did, didn't I? I mispronounced it. I apologize. So Angela is the president of the National Press Club, which is an amazing organization that brings incredible speakers together at lunch and teaches them, has audiences that talk about all sorts of issues. And she has really sort of dedicated her career to looking at the what would you call it? The motor vehicle industry, or transportation issues. And one of the things that when I read her bio that I thought was really interesting, and maybe you guys can ask her questions, that she not only covered things like the fires of Toyotas, but also the time when the Postal Service bought too many Simpson cartoon stamps. Now that's interesting. I want to hear a little bit more about that. And last but not least, we have Andrea Stone, who is a nationally renowned journalist for 30 years. And she has done from USA Today to all sorts of things. And I love the quote in her bio says that she has reported from 47 states, 26 countries, 4 war zones, 5 rings of the Pentagon, and 2 sides of Capitol Hill. So let's give them a big round of applause. So Danielle, we're going to start with you. Here's we have a couple mics so we can share, because we're all good Girl Scouts. So can you tell us a little bit of your background, and then we're going to go and just have everybody say a little something, and then we're going to open up for Q&A.
Sure. So I'm a reporter for Bloomberg News. I work on a team that covers government contracting, which basically means anything that the government spends money on, and that could be guns for war, that could be private security guards, that could be buying chairs for a building. It's basically anything that the government is spending money on. So it means that there's a lot of flexibility in what I cover. I also do what's called computer-assisted journalism, which basically means that I am a really big computer geek, and I look at huge databases and try and pull stories out of them. That's what I do.
Great. Thank you. So, Debi, can you tell us a little bit about your background? And interesting, your switch from being a person on the air all the time to now being on the air only when you have to be on the air.
Well, that just lets everyone know that there is life in journalism and there is life after journalism. And so, thanks, Lidia. I am a former news anchor and reporter with NBC4. I left NBC4 9 years ago. As a matter of fact, I left, and several years, advance it forward. That's where Angie Goff comes in. The job that I used to have is now the job that Angie Goff has as the Saturday and Sunday morning news anchor. And so I did journalism for about 15 years. Now I'm currently Vice President of Corporate Citizenship and Social Responsibility. I head up all of our philanthropic efforts and partnerships and initiatives and make corporate contributions to nonprofits like the Girl Scouts.
Woo-hoo!
So the Girl Scouts.
Yay!
Big supporter of Girl Scouts, we are, and if any of you were around for
How many went to Rock the Mall?
Rock the Mall,
Woo-hoo!
I was there too, and we also had our Pepco Edison Place Gallery, which is for nonprofit use, where Girl Scouts had a kind of like a history of 100 years Girl Scouting in the Washington metro area, and that was also the Welcome Center. And I spent the night in our Pepco Edison Place Gallery with 40 Girl Scouts. Any of those Girl Scouts in here today? Okay, if not, you'll meet them out there, I'm sure. But so I have fun. I get to do a lot of community work and connections and put our corporate dollars to good use. And so I welcome questions about journalism as well as corporate America and the power to do good within corporate America.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Angela Greiling Keane. As Lidia said, I am the president of the National Press Club this year. It's a year-long term, and it is a full-time volunteer job. So as president of the National Press Club, I lead an organization of more than 3,000 members who are primarily here in Washington, but we have members around the U.S. and including other members around the world. So we're an international organization, and we are dedicated to advancing press freedom, to being the place where newsmakers come to speak and make news on our stages. And this year especially, we're also focused on women. We're trying to make sure that we have women equally represented among our speakers, on our panels, all those sorts of things. So that's an important thing for me. For my paid job, I work with Danielle at Bloomberg News, and if you guys don't know what Bloomberg is, we are an international wire service, so we focus on business news, but we cover all sorts of news, including the Postal Service and Simpson stamps. And in the little bit of spare time I have, I'm a co-leader of my daughter's Brownie Troop. So she is a third grader and would have liked to be here today, but she's at a ski lesson, so she'll be interested to hearing what kinds of questions you guys ask, because she's really looking forward to being an older Girl Scout. And when I was a kid, I was a Girl Scout myself for 12 years, so it really helped me get launched on my journalism career. I did a lot of the career explorations, patches and things that existed back then and focused on reporting. So hopefully there's some of you guys today who will be sitting up here 20 years from now.
Thank you, Angela.
Well, I'm no Girl Scout, but I've never been the Girl Scout.
Have you eaten a Girl Scout cookie in your life?
I have eaten Girl Scout cookies.
Okay, we count that.
Right, honorary, okay. So as Lidia had to point out, I have been a journalist for actually more than 30 years. But I started at my college newspaper, so if any of you have newspapers at your school, definitely start, or radio or TV, start doing that. But basically I spent most of my career at USA Today, and as I said, I have covered, I was a Pentagon reporter, I covered Congress, I was a national reporter, that's how I got to go to 47 states. I also went overseas and covered, I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan, all throughout the Middle East, Israel, Palestinian territories, war zones. And, so it's been very interesting also as a woman to go to some conservative countries, and, I can talk about that later. And then about 3 years ago, I left newspapers and went online to AOL, and then most recently at the Huffington Post, where I did a variety of things, including Homeland Security. And right now, I'm a freelance writer, and maybe we'll be getting into Debi's business. I don't know. So we can talk about that too.
Great, thank you. And so we just have the late arrival, and she had a very good excuse. Angie Goff was not here because she was on the air. So welcome.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here. Everybody looks wonderful. Just a little quick background. Oh, thumbs up already. Wow, great crowd. I do the news over at NBC4. Anybody watch? Oh, right. Okay, you're on the right track. Actually, that's where my news interest started, because I grew up in Korea with a military family, and we used to only get one English-speaking channel. So grew up watching the news, and hope to one day do it. So very blessed to be able to do that. In addition to anchoring the shows on the weekends, I also cover breaking news during the week and do special assignments. A lot of them technology or social media based. A lot of them human story based, the good kind of news that we like to hear every now and then, right? And in addition to that, I also do a lot of community service events, and I love doing panels like this, and gives us an opportunity to go one-on-one with the people in our community. So just want to say thanks for having me.
Great. Okay, so now you know a little bit about each one of our speakers. And what I want to do is I'm going to play a little bit of Oprah and come this way, and then you just raise your hand and you can stand up and ask any question that you have. It could be something simple. Now don't get shy. We're all friends here. So does anybody have a question for one of our panelists? Please come stand up. Tell me your name.
Rosetta.
Rosetta, how old are you?
I'm 12.
And what is your question?
What is the toughest thing you do in your job?
Ooh, that's a really good question. The toughest thing you do in your job. A couple people want to take that?
So, well, I don't know if it's the toughest, but over the years I've covered like a lot of natural disasters, like hurricanes, and when people got hurt or they lost their homes, and that could be really hard. Like one time I was covering a hurricane and met a woman who'd lost everything, and it's kind of hard to to interview somebody, and that's really hard to do, and talk to people who've like lost loved ones.
Anybody else want to talk about a tough? Yes. And then
I would say also dealing with people who have had tough experiences would be among the hardest things. In my beat, I cover Washington, and I write specifically about regulation. So that's rules that the federal government writes. That can be kind of boring sometimes, but we always try to find ways to make it interesting. So a story I did a year and a half ago or so was about a rule to require all cars to have cameras in them so you can see when you're backing up. If you have a screen in your car, a lot of people have them now, you can look and see what's behind you while you're parking or backing up. Well, to write that story, I went to Iowa and interviewed a mother who had backed over her little boy, and it was really hard to do the interview, but she was willing to talk because it was so important to her to have something important come out of this tragedy in her family. But just preparing for the interview myself and everything as a mother, it was really hard.
So Debi, do you want to answer? What is a tough story you've covered?
Yeah, just the toughest part of when I was a journalist was doing the stories of children. And I think one of the toughest ones was covering a fire where a father lost not only his wife, but he lost his 2 children in the fire. And then to see the bodies being brought out of the home. And there are a number of parts to the real story that you can't fully grasp unless you're there. You can see the tears in the eyes. You can, see the scene of whatever it is, whether it's a crime or it's a fire, a tragedy, but the real feeling, the real emotion of being there on the scene and standing in the same place where an officer was shot, killed, lost his life. That's probably one of the toughest things I remember about my days in journalism. And now where I am now, one of the toughest things for me is to tell a nonprofit that's out there trying to help others in the community who are not fortunate, to tell them that I'm afraid that I can't help fund your nonprofit. And that's really tough. Don't want to do that, but there are limits to the amount of dollars that we have. So we work really hard to put those dollars, those corporate contributions dollars, to good use.
Great, thank you. Okay, other questions? Oh, good, there's hands going. Okay, I'm going to go back and then come forward. Come this way so that I can. So tell me your name.
My name is Catherine.
Hi, Catherine. How old are you?
9.5.
9.5. And what is your question?
Is it easy being a reporter?
Is it easy being a reporter? Who wants to take that on?
No.
Why? What do you think? Does it? Why is it not easy? You think?
I mean, it's not easy because there are challenges. You end up talking to people who, in some cases, have terrible things happen to them, or maybe dealing with something that that the public doesn't understand, and then you're going to have to explain it. I deal a lot with government regulation, as does Angela, and it sometimes is very complicated, and explaining it in a way that people who aren't dealing with it day in, day out will understand it, that can be a challenge. But, I mean, part of what I like about my job is that it's challenging and that it isn't really easy to do. I don't think I would want to do it if it was easy.
Okay, and then there was a question up here in the front. Yes. Your name?
Kristen.
Kristen, and how old are you?
12.
12. And your question?
How do you and your team find out about the news, like right as it happens?
Yeah. So Angie, how do you find out when there's a breaking story? Who tells you that you need to go cover something? How does that happen?
Well, as far as getting news tips and everything, now we have this thing called social media, which is great because we are in an age where we expect the news to find us, right? We're not seeing the 6 o'clock news break as many stories as before because we have them breaking online, and the news gathering is so much more accessible than it was before. But just to be pretty blunt with the answer, I know in our newsroom, you know, we have a lot of legacy reporters that have great contacts and great sources. So a lot of times we get ahead of the game with really good in-depth stories that nobody else is going to get. But, you know, there is a wire service where, you know, it's updated daily with anything that's breaking. We call it Crossing the Wire. That's something that I monitor all through the week during the morning, starting at 3:30 in the morning, all the way through the morning shows. And then we just rely on our sources. We have our assignment editor who kind of just rules the deck, and he's the one that, you know, calls out stories in the newsroom, and then, you know, he'll yell someone's name to follow up on it. But we also have individualized and specific reporters that are kind of designated in certain parts of the area, or they cover transportation, and so certain stories will fall under them. So if they're usually the first choice to go and cover a news story of that sort. And then from there, you know, they'll figure something out if that person's not available. But it really is a team effort. There's a lot of meetings that happen on the phone and in the in-house all throughout the day, so that we know that we have the most current, up-to-date information and the most breaking news stories of the day to keep everything relevant and to keep us on top of things.
I'm interested in hearing one of you talk about a story, because investigative reporting, when you have to, not just a breaking news story, but something that you have to sort of dig around to find that information. Does anybody want to talk about an experience that they had doing that kind of journalism?
One of my favorite stories that I ever worked on was before I was at Bloomberg. I was at a place called the Huffington Post Investigative Fund, and we did only investigative work. And I was really interested in the relationship between pesticide companies and farmers. It seemed like a complicated relationship where there was a lot of tension. And I started looking at a chemical called atrazine, which is the second most commonly used pesticide in the country. It's basically what farmers use to grow corn, to kill the weeds. And I was talking to everyone who had a stake in this fight over whether we should use it, or whether it should be banned, or whether it should be better regulated, and no one could tell me how much of this chemical was actually getting into people's drinking water. So I went to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and I filed what's called a Freedom of Information request under the Freedom of Information Act, which was passed under President Lyndon Johnson. We can ask for almost any government information. It's an open records law that we have, and the government is required within 20 days, if possible, to get us that information. And I asked for the real levels of atrazine in drinking water across the Midwest. And what I found is that when the EPA did finally give me my response, was that this chemical was actually being found in huge quantities in people's drinking water, yet the EPA and state EPAs and local governments were actually reporting very low levels, a different number than what was actually being found. And that's a way that you can get information from the government that they don't really want to tell you. And I've found that FOIA has been key in terms of many of the investigative stories that I've worked on.
Thanks, Danielle. Anybody else want to take on the...
Yeah, I could kind of combine the two questions. Angie mentioned keeping an eye on the wires to make sure they're on top of news. Danielle and I are the wires. So we're supposed to be first. In fact, we are paid to be first. And we have a lot of competitors. So we are measured in literally fractions of seconds against our competitors when it comes to breaking news. And since a lot of what we cover is financial, we go to businesses, keep an eye on their press releases, things like that. There's a lot of official channels, but a lot of it is what's called beat reporting. And so that's, each reporter has a particular area of interest and area of expertise that they're responsible for. So if you know something's going to happen and you ask the right questions, sometimes you're able to get that information first just by having a good, deep knowledge of whatever the topic is. And there really are people who want us to have that information, even if it's just a tiny little bit ahead of our competitors. Really, really important.
Some of that just comes from taking people out to lunch all the time.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so we have a question back here. Yes. Come, tell me your name.
Melanie.
Hi, Melanie. How old are you?
11.
And what is your question?
If you weren't doing this job, what job would you be doing?
So if you were not a journalist, if you were not working on media-related, what would you be doing?
Well, I said I am trying to get into communications, but if I hadn't become a journalist when I was, young, I would have probably become a historian.
Historian, okay.
Because journalism is like the first draft of history, and so if you're really interested in current events and history, it's a really good thing to do.
Great. Other answers?
So for me, I have had many jobs. I've not always been a journalist. Before I was a journalist, I was in sales, advertising, marketing, and then I decided that I wanted to be a journalist. And then after being a journalist, then I got into corporate communications, working for Pepco, and now
your dream job, Debbie, what would you have been doing?
A doctor.
Okay.
A doctor, because I just love science and love helping people and making them feel better.
Well, it's great that Andrea said historian. Before I was a journalist, I was in grad school studying history, and before that I was a college student studying history. And I guess my take on history has always been that it's not that dissimilar from journalism. It's just that all your sources are dead. But you're looking at documents and you're looking through archives and you're trying to basically piece together something that happened, just like a detective. But really my answer would probably be like rock star or something like that.
Anyone else? Interesting dream jobs? Anyone else?
Well, I always wanted to be a pro basketball player, and this is, literally everything in my room was basketball. I wanted to go to UT, and I had dreams that one day there would be a professional women's basketball professional association, and there is one finally now, but I unfortunately stopped growing, and And so, and I'm no Earl Boykin, so I got, I kind of had to give that up. But yeah, I really wanted to play ball.
Did everybody go? No,
No, just me. I'm doing my dream job. This is what I always wanted to do. When I decided I wanted to be a reporter when I was younger than most of you guys in this room. I was, 10 or so when I decided it. So let me give you one tiny little piece of advice. If any of you guys know now what you want to do when you're an adult, decide on a really good answer of why you want to do it. Because I was just a kid, I just liked it, I wanted to do it. And every job interview you go to, they say, well, why do you want to do this? Why did you want to go into journalism? And I'm like, I don't know, because I was in 3rd grade and it just sounded cool.
Okay, thank you for those answers. Here's another question. Tell me your name.
Jenny,
Hi, Jenny. How old are you?
11.
11. And what is your question?
Which college did you go to and where is it located?
Aha. What college, what kind of education did you all pursue?
Okay, so
Where is it located? That's important.
I went to the City University of New York, which had, at the time, had free tuition. And then I went to Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism a few years later.
Which is in New York. I went to the University of Missouri, which is in Columbia, Missouri. It's in the middle of the state, and they have a internationally known journalism program, which is why I chose it.
So I went to Hope College, which is a small private liberal arts and Christian college. It's in Holland, Michigan, and I majored in, actually had a double major in business administration and international studies. So it was really international business. So I'm all messed up. But I did pursue graduate studies in journalism at American University. But I stopped because all my friends there were like, why are you doing this? Because you're where we want to be. Because I was news anchor and reporter at NBC4 when I was doing all of that. So
sometimes it's a zigzag.
It's a zigzag, but the main thing is that I was doing it.
Exactly. Great.
I went to Princeton University.
Where's that?
That's in Princeton, New Jersey. And I studied history, but really mainly I did a lot of theater. That's pretty much all I did when I was in college. And worked a little bit for the newspaper. And then I went to Oxford University and studied history as well.
And where's Oxford?
That's in Oxford in England.
Okay, great. And
I'm going to feel like a complete failure after this story. I actually only applied to one university originally, one college, and that was West Point Military Academy. I wanted to go to West Point, become an officer eventually, maybe play basketball for the team if I could. I got rejected, so I failed again. And then I applied last minute to George Mason University because it was close to home, and my best friend from high school was going there. And I applied there thinking I was just going to transfer, but I ended up falling in love with it because it was so close to DC and a lot more opportunities, and it ended up being a great place for an education. And today is their Mason homecoming, so
yoo-hoo!
Go Patriots!
Go Patriots. Okay, another question back here. I'm coming back to the front, so get ready. Okay, let me get this question back here. Hello.
Hi,
Tell me your name.
Rihanna,
Hi, Rihanna. How old are you?
10.
10. And what is your question for our panel?
What do you like the most about your job?
What do you like the most about your job? The early hours? Those of you who do early mornings?
That's not the part that, the best part that I've always liked about being a journalist is being where history's being made, also getting to meet really famous people, powerful people, and just, being able to go to new places and travel. I mean, I had great opportunities. That's the best part.
I like that it's something different every day. You have a beat, often you write about the same topics, but every day is something different. You might be going to a hearing, you might be digging through documents, you might be interviewing somebody famous or important, but every day it's something new.
So when I was a journalist, I would agree with both. Get to meet a lot of folks and something new every day. And where I am now, I love the fact that that I can help people. It all comes back to doing something good in the community. Both in journalism, I would do the good stories, try and tell the good stories about, someone, the community. And I just love doing good. I'm just a good girl.
I feel kind of bad about that. Well, I actually I work a lot on investigative stories, so it's usually is not a new thing for me every day. I will spend days digging through documents or scouring a database or filing FOIA requests or just trying to get someone to talk to me about something that they really don't want to talk to me about. And I think my favorite part is when you find out something that no one else knows and you know that that's going to be your story. I think that that's my absolute favorite part of the job.
Yeah, I definitely think that if you're a curious and a nosy and annoying person, like many of us probably were as kids, it's great. You get like a certain type of head rush when you know that you've got something that nobody else has, or you know that you're going to beat the competition. So even if you have that competitive nature, a lot of athletes have that. I think that that is one of the driving things that has kept me, in this race for the last 10 years. I also think that if you're a creative person and you like to tell stories, there's no better way to do it than through the world of journalism. I stay up at night thinking about stuff and writing it down and hoping that I'm going to be able to sell it and pitch it and someone's going to buy it and I'm going to have the ability to go out and make it a reality. And sometimes, it is disheartening because not everybody sees what you see is going to be a good story, and you just kind of have to take that. But I think that that is one of the best things that I look forward to doing every single day.
So we know that the world of media is dominated by a lot of men who are the ones who are the anchors, and who, when you look at the statistic that I was reading recently, is that when you look at media nationwide, we only have, I think, 2 women who actually, Radio 1 and BET, who actually own a conglomerate of media. So you as women, do you think that being a woman impacted the way that you were able early on in your careers to get your stories?
I would say that sometimes being a woman and having a little more compassion, if you will, allowed me to get the stories, to get someone to talk to me when they wouldn't talk to someone else. And I know both Kathy Hughes and Deborah Lee, and they are, they're just phenomenal women who they have that compassion. They see things that maybe someone else might not see, and it's because of that insight and that, willingness to just keep going for it that has allowed them to be in the positions that they are now, both heading their own company and being at the top of a significant media organization.
So the question is, has being a woman impacted?
Well, I would go this way. Most of my career I covered not kind of girl kind of subjects like national security and at the Pentagon, and when I was there weren't a lot of women journalists there, so we were like really close bunch, the ones of us who did. But I'll tell you, you shouldn't be, just because you're a woman, you can do anything you want. I've been reporter in the Middle East, where because of cultural differences, a lot of Middle Eastern women don't do journalism, but here in the West, we will go and we can do things as women that if we were men, they wouldn't expect us to. And there are more and more women especially like in the Middle East, in war correspondence. If anybody wants to go do that, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of women who do it, and some of them are more courageous than some of the men. So they're really tough.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Let me use that question as an entry into one other thing that's important in this area, and that's women being sources in news stories. If you read the newspaper, online media, or watch TV, a lot of times, if you pay close attention, there'll be a lot more men who are quoted than there are women when it comes to certain types of stories, and that is an important thing that a lot of people are paying attention to, which is good. Doesn't mean it's a problem that goes away overnight, but one thing I find in my beat covering business is that I usually need someone right this second. I don't have the luxury of, call me back in 3 days. No, I need you to call me back in 30 seconds if you're going to be in my story. And I find that women academics and people who might be considered experts in particular areas sometimes can be harder to convince that they really are an expert and I want their opinion, it's important to me. Men are like, oh yeah, great, you want to talk to me? Sure. And
they hesitate a little bit. They want to make sure that they know their information.
Exactly, and I know that that's something that...
So don't hesitate, young ladies.
Girl Scouts works on in terms of its CEO initiative to have more women in places of leadership, but I just wanted to plant that seeds in your mind as young women that when you are in a position to be informed about something, to be sought after as an information source, be it now when you're a kid or when you're older, don't hesitate, be out there.
Okay, who doesn't want to hesitate and ask a question? Good, I see more hands going up. I'm coming around. Tell me your name.
Josephine.
Josephine, how old are you?
12.
12, and what is your question?
Have you ever had to travel somewhere, like, really fast? Like, you had to go, like, to a different, like, country?
Quickly.
Okay, so one day, 6 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. It's my editor. There's been a bombing at the Olympics in Atlanta. Get on a plane. This happens a lot. And also, 9/11. On 9/11, I was in my office in downtown Washington, and I had to go to the Pentagon, and I got there about a couple minutes after the plane hit there. So, yeah, there's always, when you cover breaking news, that's what happens.
So do you carry toothbrush, toothpaste, and underwear in your pocketbook?
Not to the Pentagon. But there's a whole...
Girl Scouts are always prepared.
Well, actually, during when the war was starting after 9/11, some of us did have packed bags because we just didn't know where we were going, and it's not the usual stuff that you take with you. Yeah, that happens.
Great. There was another question. I want to get to a lot of questions, so let's see. Okay, and I'm going to go around. Yes, I see you back there. I'm coming. Tell me your name and your question.
Taylor, and have you met any celebrities, and who's your favorite?
Ooh, celebrities. Well, there's political celebrities and there's Hollywood celebrities. We could do either one. Oh, you want Hollywood celebrities? I'll rephrase. Who's the most famous person that you've had a chance to interview or meet?
Well, at the National Press Club, we host regular luncheons with important people, some of whom are celebrities. So in my press club work, I do meet a lot of celebrities. Not Hollywood, but I think that meeting President Obama was probably my highlight in terms of important people. But on the celebrity side, in the last few years, we had Ludacris, who was great. He was a very good speaker, very good at taking questions. Happy to be there. We had Nick Jonas a couple years ago. He spoke when he was 16. He was one of our youngest solo luncheon speakers that we've ever had.
Wow.
And it takes a lot of guts to be 16 and talk to a huge audience in person and a live audience on TV and answer questions that you don't know what they're going to be. But he was great. He talked about his charity that he founded to help research juvenile diabetes, which he has.
Very cool.
I used to work in Entertainment Tonight. I didn't get my first... Exactly. It's been around for like 25 years, still going. But, right out of college, I didn't get a TV reporting job. So I was offered by the host of Entertainment Tonight to come out and be his personal assistant. So I literally went everywhere with him. So, you name the celebrity, we met him. Ben Affleck, Madonna, Beyonce. Everyone.
Who was your favorite?
To be honest, you kids probably don't even know who he is. But Tony Danza, surprisingly, I was a big Who's the Boss fan. So
Tony,
all this. Is this working? Yeah. Tony, exactly.
How many of you have heard of Tony Danza? Let's see hands. All the cheerleaders have heard of Tony Danza.
Parents raise their hands. So, but he was great. Harrison Ford was really nice. But recently, I cover a lot of Smash, so I just went up to New York and I did a one-on-one with Deborah Messing and Jennifer Hudson and all of them. And then I was out with Adam Levine and CeeLo for The Voice and Justin Bieber, who wasn't very nice. But yeah, so
some celebrities aren't nice.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I missed that concert because it was during our ratings period up in today, but I tried.
That's a funny question. So, okay, a question here? Yes, come. Hold this. Okay. Here, I'll pass it down. Just don't keep it.
My name's Alexis, and I'm 13. What is a typical day like for you when you're on your job?
Is there there such a thing as a typical day on the job? Or things that you do every day?
There's no day that's the same, but a typical day for me starts around 8:30 in one of my offices. I have 2 offices this year, but it often starts before that on the BlackBerry. In fact, last week my daughter, who like I said is 8, was at home with me. We were getting ready and news breaks on the Postal Service, which is, again, part of my beat. So my editors are like, we need to just right this second. Somebody else had a story. I'm like, okay, I'm working on it. Hang on a second. Let me call a bunch of sources. But my poor daughter, I was going to make her breakfast. And eventually she's sitting there waiting and says, Mommy, would you like me to butter your toast for you? I said, yes, that would be great. Thank you. But sometimes days start like that. Usually I'm either in the office or on Capitol Hill covering something, or at the Department of Transportation covering something. There can be meetings, but I guess all of us are have been on the reporting side more than on the editor side. If you're an editor in journalism, no matter whether you're in print or broadcast or whatever, there's a lot more meetings, because they're the people that decide what stories are going to go on the front of the paper, on the front of the web page, first in the newscast, all those sorts of things. But for reporters, it's a lot more scrambling, making phone calls, meeting with your sources, and then also having time to write or produce whatever it is you're working on for the audience.
So it sounds like you have to be really flexible. So have you missed important things in your personal life because of work sometimes?
Oh, I have the best story.
Okay.
So I have a son who is 26 now, but I went over when the Iraq War, before the Iraq War started. They wanted me to go in with the invasion, but I said no. I said I have my limits. So I went to Qatar, which is in the Persian Gulf. It's a country where we had the military. The U.S. military had a headquarters there. And I went there for a month, and then the war didn't start. So I said, I'll stay for 2 more weeks, okay? And that was the longest I'd ever been away from my son. And that was the year when he was starting to, he was going to go on his first college tour. I said, I have to leave on March 19th because I have to drive to, Oberlin and Ann Arbor, Michigan, because we're going to go look at colleges, and I'm not going to miss this. And so somebody came in the night before, Donna, and I got on practically the last plane that left Doha, Qatar, because they were closing the airspace because the war was going to start. And I got to London, and I called up I called up the person who replaced me, and she said, I can't talk to you now because the bombs are falling, and the war started. And I was like the only reporter who left the war zone because it was important for me to be there when my son went to. He didn't go to either of those colleges, by the way. But that
you remind him every day that you went to his college
here. But that's just with boys and girls also. But that kind of brings up what nobody's talked about, kind of like life-work balance, which is not a minor thing. And it's also especially hard when you go to cover breaking news, or you go far away where you can't just come back at night for supper. So that's definitely something that you kind of have to think about. But I had a very good husband. If you get a good partner who's going to share all the work with you, and that's great. But anyway, so that's the best story I can tell. But sometimes I have missed stuff because stuff happens, and that's hard. It really is.
So Angie, you're the only person on the panel who is expecting a baby. Can we give her a hand? Yay! So talk about work-family balance. Do you think about this?
I do. Well, this is my second baby. Talking about the work-life balance, this is something that I think a lot of women struggle with every day, because we are told when we are young, you can be president of the United States, you can be the CEO of a company, you can be a news anchor and still have it all. But in all reality, it wasn't until I had my first child that I was like, this is tough. This is tough, and there's going to be sacrifices that have to be made. I married my husband back in 2008. I moved here in 2007. I still have not lived with him. We're going on 6 years here. He lives in South Carolina, where he has his business. this is where I'm from and this is where I want to be. It was always a dream to come back and work in Washington. And after having my first child, I told him, I'm not moving. Everybody thought I was moving back south, and I'm like, no, this is my dream. I'm staying up here. And here we are with number 2 on the way, and I'm going to stay up here with number 2 as well. And I think the biggest thing is I've just learned to start to say no. I think as women, we try to say yes, 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 and please, and do so much more. So I think creating boundaries has become the biggest asset in the success of my career, to be able to find that balance. But it is very tough, and it comes down to answering that one question is, why do you want to do this? And for me, my work is my happiness. And if I'm happy most of the day, that's going to reflect in the rest of my life and my family.
And then everybody else in your family will be happy if you're happy. Okay, other questions?
Everybody's happy.
Sure. Here, this is an adult asking a question. I want to ask you how old you are. Your name?
I'm Lisa, and I have a question about the very first job that led you on this wonderful journey that got you to where you are today. Because a lot of kids think that they're just going to jump into those jobs, but I know you start somewhere other than being a news anchor.
My first paid job in journalism was because of Girl Scouts. I was doing a career patch. It probably doesn't exist anymore. It was something,
career patch. Yes, we do those.
It was at the time. It was yellow with like some white stuff on it. It wasn't a regular badge or anything, but it was something extra. I'm sure there's some version of it now. But I was doing that, and so I asked a weekly newspaper where I grew up in a suburb in Minnesota if I could shadow this young woman reporter for a couple days, and she said yes. So it was during the summer, and I went and hung out with her and just followed her around and everything she did, and I'm sure she was like, why do you think this is so exciting? But I thought it was great. And at the end of the week, they asked if I would like to write a column, which I said, of course I would. So I wrote about a Girl Scout water opportunity trip that I had been on. It was a spelunking trip to Virginia. I didn't grow up here, but to Virginia and West Virginia. So I wrote about the Girl Scout trip, and it had my picture with the column. I thought it was so cool. And then the next summer, that was when I was 15. So the next summer when I was 16, they asked if I wanted to come back and do some paid work for the newspaper over the summer. And of course I said yes. So I was paid $15 per story, which is pretty much far below minimum wage. It was probably illegal, but I thought it was fabulous to have a paycheck from journalism.
Great. Any other first jobs?
My first paid job in journalism was working as an intern for an English language newspaper called The Nation in Thailand. I was a sophomore in college. I was just about to go into my junior year, and I went overseas for, I think, 3 months and lived with the host family and worked for this newspaper. And basically, I was just so excited to be reporting that I just kept pitching stories, and I think they just thought I was like really weird. They're like, don't you want to go to like the beach, or like don't you want to take a lunch break? But I just reported on whatever I could. I didn't speak Thai when I got there, so I just tried to learn as much as I could, and ended up covering really interesting stuff. I reviewed a Harry Potter book. I interviewed like Coldplay. It was really nice to be a native English speaker at a Thai newspaper, yeah, it was just like one of those great jobs where you go into it thinking that you're going to be getting people coffee, and actually you end up just like doing the job that everyone else is doing.
How many of you are interested in going into TV news or broadcasting? So a good number. Well, in TV, you typically there's no sure path of how you get to where you get, but a lot of people go to smaller markets. So my first TV job was in the middle of nowhere in Sioux City, Iowa. Anyone from Iowa? I'm not going to make any jokes. Okay. And I was the morning anchor, and I shot and I edited. I even rolled my own teleprompter, the things that we read. And sometimes the shot would be wide enough because the guy would, it was like 2 in the morning, he'd fall asleep. And so you'd actually see me rolling the prompter. And but I waited tables on the weekend. So I was the morning anchor, but because I was so poor, because they paid you nothing, I was serving it up on the weekends just to make my bills and pay my bills.
Wow.
Crazy.
My first job as a reporter, talking about being poor, I got paid nothing. I was 30 years old, and I made a career move. I've made several career moves, but this was the biggest career move that I made, and I actually took a step back, way back. and basically was making nothing to just get my foot in the door in reporting, because it was that important to me. And then on the side, I worked at UPS. I got up at 2 o'clock, and
2 a.m.
2 a.m. So
I get up now.
Yeah, you know, so that I could be there at 3, and I worked until like 8 in the morning, and then I went and interned in the newsroom of the station that I had been in sales in before that, and I quit sales just so that I could intern, and I took on this UPS job, and thank God I only had to do it for 2 weeks. Because then I had been all over the place talking to folks back home about being a reporter, and I was able to get my first full-time reporter gig.
Wow, that is, you know, talk about perseverance and sacrifice, you know. There was a question back here. Who was kept raising their hand when I was down there?
But learn.
Was it you? Come on. Okay, here we go. We have a question back here. You don't want to ask the question? Oh, you were just pointing that she should be asking the question. Is that what's going on? Okay, here we go. Let's not, we don't hesitate. We're Girl Scouts. Stand up. Tell me your name.
Emily.
Hi, Emily. What is your question?
Is it easy to keep up with work and your family, to have time for everything?
Again, the work-family balance. Is it easy to keep up with everything?
No.
Or do you not do laundry anymore? Is that...
I don't. As a matter of fact, my sons are 10 and 12. How many of you 10 and 12-year-old ladies do your own laundry? Okay, well, I'm working on my sons for them to learn how to do it. I told them I was going on strike. I told my husband that too. Just because, you know, when you're a working mom, you try to do everything, but it is so very important that you take care of yourself, especially Angie. You know, you got to make sure you get all that sleep that you can and drink all that water that you can. But it's tough. It's rewarding, but it's tough. And you know what? Sorry, any of the guys who are in this room, I am convinced that women are just so much stronger than men, because we multitask, we do homework, we cook, and then we go out and we bring home the bacon.
Amen, sister. All right, so what is your question? What is your name first?
Cynthia.
Hi, Cynthia. How old are you?
12.
12. And what is your question? Ask a hard one, a hard question.
What inspired you guys to be a journalist?
Do you have a mentor that inspired you? Was there somebody or something that inspired you to follow this career path? Someone who hasn't talked, yes.
I mean, I would say that having mentors was very, very important to me. My freshman year of college, I was in a class with Barton Gilman, who at the time was a reporter at the Washington Post, is now at Time Magazine. And he basically kind of took me under his wing in the class, and really, like, I mean, I felt like he was someone who really cared about what I was writing and wanted to help me out and wanted to just be like a source of support. And throughout my career, I've had people like that. I've had really good editors. And those are the people who have really inspired me to do this job, because it's actually, like, it's a really great job. Like, it's something to be really proud of. Like, journalists, you're holding people accountable. You're looking at the government and at companies and organizations and individuals and making sure that they're doing the right thing. I mean, that in itself is inspiring, but having people that you can look up to is a big part of that.
When I was a kid, I was like consuming the news. I read the newspaper like as soon as I could read. We didn't have the internet, of course, then, but I was able to watch the evening news more often, because where I grew up, the nightly news was on at 10 instead of 11, like it is on the East Coast. But I think that I was so fascinated with current events and with learning about them that one of the things that inspired me to go into journalism was that if you are a journalist, you don't have to wait for the news to come out. You're there. You're the one writing it and bringing it to the public.
Okay, other questions? Here we have a question. Tell me your name.
Mary Kate.
And how old are you, Mary Kate?
19.
19. And what is your question?
This is for Lidia. What made you, for me? No.
Yeah, the business. Oh, okay. For
me, Debi Jarvis.
Debi. I would like to be Lidia.
Okay, what made you switch from business administration to journalism?
Because of communications. It's all about communicating. Journalism is a form of communications that everybody can see your job, what you do. And because I like talking to people, I'm nosy, and so from business administration to journalism, because I like to hog the mic, it was just me. It was just really me. And I thought that I could do something good in the world by helping to tell the stories that were not being told.
Thank you. Okay, here we have your name.
Gabby.
Gabby, how old are you?
12.
12. And what is your question for the whole panel?
What's the funniest story you've ever covered?
Maybe we can start with the stamps.
Yeah, since you mentioned the Simpsons stamps, that was definitely a fun one. And like I said, I cover regulation. That can really put people to sleep. But so it's always a challenge to find a way to make people interested in the stories. And of course, today you can tell exactly how many people read your story by clicks. At Bloomberg, we can tell on our proprietary computers how many people click on a story, and we can also tell on our websites, Bloomberg.com and BusinessWeek.com, and you can measure exactly how many people tweet your story or post it on whatever form of social media. So you want to get as many of those as possible. So in this case, there was a report by something called an Inspector General, which is like a watchdog. There's one for every government agency, including for the Postal Service. So I get these emails, they put out a report, and you're like, okay, well, they put out reports all the time. But I was skimming through the report, and there is a picture of Homer Simpson. I'm like, well, this looks fun. A lot more fun than your average boring report. And it turned out that the Postal Service bought way too many Simpson stamps when they printed them, I think it's like 2009. And they thought that Simpson stamps would be a lot more popular for purchase than they actually were. So the Postal Service wasted a ton of money by printing these stamps that instead of being bought and put on letters to mail, ended up being destroyed. Wow. But if you put Homer Simpson in a headline, guess what?
Your story comes up.
Exactly, and it just went everywhere. It also helped that it was during the week between Christmas and New Year, which is usually a fairly slow time for news, so the story just went viral, and we had a lot of fun with it.
I had a lot of fun stories because, being a military reporter, I get to go in helicopters and aircraft carriers and like all kinds of really fun. But actually, after I left USA Today, I went to AOL News, and my editor had this idea for a story. You know how the astronauts train in zero gravity? They go in these airplanes that go and make these parabolic things like this, and like for about 30 seconds, you're actually weightless, as if you were in space. And he told me he wanted me to go do this because there's a company where for $5,000 or $6,000, anybody can go do this. And I said, well, you don't understand, I don't even like roller coasters. And so when I was ready, I went on it, and I was very proud I did not barf, which was like a really big, and then another really fun story that in 2010, also this is also at AOL, was the census. The Census Bureau every 10 years counts the population, and they always go up. The first place that they count is above the Arctic Circle in Alaska. They go to a native village because by the time they ask the questions in April, they want to get there in January before the spring and before it breaks up. And anyway, so I went with the Census Bureau director above the Arctic Circle in the dead of winter. It was dark because there's no light, like only for a couple of hours, and that was just so way cool.
Wow.
I'll tell you the weirdest experience I had working on a story. That story I was talking about earlier with the pesticides, people were drinking it and they're drinking water. The EPA wasn't telling people about it. I found out about a year after we did that series of stories that the pesticide company, while we were working on it, apparently hired a PR company to have me investigated while it was going on. I never would have guessed that from their responses to my emails that they cared at all, but apparently they decided to drop some like major dough to make sure that like they could come back at me when the series came out. So if anyone ever tells you that journalism doesn't matter, they're lying. People care.
Entertainment tonight? No funny stories there?
I mean, honestly, in my career, I haven't covered a whole lot of fun stuff. I used to do investigative reporting before coming to DC. I'm trying to think anything. I mean, fun assignments, covering the Rose Parade out in California. That's fun. It's like Disneyland out there. Everybody's really happy. But I don't know. Nothing really funny.
Okay, so we have time for one, maybe two more questions. So if you have a burning question that hasn't been answered, this young lady back here, and then we'll come to the front. Yes. Tell me your name.
Kayla.
Hi, Kayla. How old are you?
11, turning 12 in 6 days.
Woo! Okay, and what is your question? Make it count, because this might be the last question we're able to ask our panel. So make a really good question. Hot seat. Okay, here we go.
What was the it moment like when you wanted to be a journalist?
Is there a moment that crystallizes in your mind when you were growing up that you said, this is what I want to do?
Well, I said I wanted to be a historian, but actually what I wanted to be until I got to college was an actress. And I actually took acting lessons. But when I got to college, reality set in. And I decided, and I had worked on my newspaper in high school and in junior high school, and I really loved writing. And that's when I realized, okay, what am I going to do the rest of my life? And I became an English major, and because I loved to write, and I was always curious, and I combined my love of writing with my love of history, and put that together, and I came up with journalism. So, you may think you want to be something today, but you may change your mind later. So maybe listening to us, somebody wants to be a journalist.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be fun? 20 years from now, you're sitting in that chair and you say, I went to a media panel in 2013 and I heard about journalism, and that's why I'm now a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist sitting here. Anyone else inspiration that moment in time?
I moved to DC in 2008, and I was already a reporter, but I moved here to work for a startup that no longer exists called the American News Project, and I was a videographer. So I basically, I actually took video, I edited everything, I reported it, the whole kit and caboodle. And one of the first stories that I worked on was about voting rights in Philadelphia. They had lots of problems during the primary where people didn't get to vote because the lines were too long, because machines were broken, and I thought that was really important. So I went up to interview some people on the election commission in Philly. And I expected, I'm this girl with a video camera. I expected that they would tell me that they didn't have resources, and that's why they were having so many problems. But instead, the guy looked right into my camera and said, not everyone's going to be able to vote. And it doesn't really matter. And we continued covering this story for weeks, and actually the NAACP ended up suing the city of Philadelphia, the state of Pennsylvania, and we ended up just having these crazy moments on camera where people would look directly into the camera and say things like, people wait in line for Phillies tickets all night. Same thing. And that was, it was so exciting to be involved with that and to actually be able to put that out into the world and say, look, this is a real problem.
Wow, absolutely. So we have one, you'll be our final question. Is that okay? We're gonna ask, are you a troop leader?
Okay.
She's a helping mom. So what is your question? What is your name and your question?
Debi. My name's Debi. I just want to know if you were given a story that you just really didn't want to work on, or you just didn't believe in that story.
I think that happens a lot, and I think back to my career, and I kind of get mad sometimes that I didn't stand up, because stand up for myself, because a lot of times you have these layers of managers saying, this is what we want. I mean, to the point where they're saying, ask this, and telling you how to do your story. And when you're just starting out, it's very intimidating, because you're out to prove your credibility and your compliance and all of that. And I just remember being in South Carolina, and there was a missing girl, and she was a Hispanic girl. And my assistant news director said, you need to go talk to the sheriff of this county and ask them why they're not, putting the pressure on to find this girl, and I want you to ask them the race question. Ask them, is it because she's Hispanic? And I'm half Korean, and the chief, she was a minority. She's African American, and I just didn't feel comfortable asking her that. But I went through. I did it. I had this really gut feeling that was bad, and after that, she refused to talk to me. She put me for she banned me for 2 to 3 months. That she would give me an interview, because she thought it was so disrespectful that someone like me would ask her that. And as someone who was trying to find this girl, and I threw out the race question, and so for me that was really, really hard, and an awakening in a sense that if you just don't feel like it's right, no matter how many people are saying you're going to do this, go ahead, fire me. But at least I have my integrity with it. So that was one experience.
Anyone else want to? Debbie?
I will share this as it's on the same vein. I did this story because I wanted to do this story, and it was about teen pregnancy, and this report came out, and it actually said that teen pregnancy rates in the district had dropped, but they were still at the bottom of the list. And my target was, okay, well, it dropped. But the producers were like, well, but DC is still the worst. And I did not feel comfortable with that, because I thought that I interviewed young women who were sharing their story. They were at the Sasha Bruce house, and I wanted to make it more of a positive story. But I had to go in, and with that, still DC had the worst teen pregnancy rates, as opposed to that over the years, all the things that had been going on were helping to decrease that number. So I had a hard time with that one.
Wow. Well, I want to thank our amazing panel. Can we give them a hand? They're going to stick around for a few minutes. Hanging on the back of your chair is a little thank you gift on behalf of the Girl Scouts. I hope that if you have to travel somewhere, you could take that Girl Scout bag and put whatever you need in it to make it count. And let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much.